стопам değil.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Мухаммад وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Глубоко уважаемый профессор Тарик Рамадан, уважаемые коллеги, ассаламу алейкум ва рахматуллахи та'аля ва баракатуху. Мира вам, милости Всевышнего и его благословения. Я рад вас всех сегодня здесь приветствовать в обновленном комплексе нашей Московской соборной мечети. Как вы все прекрасно знаете, буквально 2 месяца назад она раскрыла свои двери, и все, что вы сегодня здесь можете видеть, было сделано благодаря непомерным усилиям нашего духовного лидера, муфтия шейха Равин Хазрата Байнуддина, при политической поддержке президента нашей страны Владимира Владимировича Путина, которые и открыли этот комплекс буквально вот 2 месяца назад. Действительно, на протяжении всей своей 111-летней истории Московская соборная мечеть являлась центром не только российских мусульман, но и притягивала свои взоры на всем евразийском пространстве. Ее посещали очень многие политические, общественные деятели, религиозные деятели, богословы. И вот буквально в течение этих 2 месяцев со дня открытия ее посетил и имам 2 запретных мечетей и выступил здесь со своей проповедью. Посетил ее и руководитель в ранге министра Министерства по делам религии Турецкой Республики. Посетил ее и муфтий Чеченской Республики. И сегодня мы с вами являемся свидетелями еще одного важного, действительно исторического события, что именно здесь, в Московской соборной мечети, происходит презентация первой книги на русском языке, действительно одного из крупнейших современных мусульманских мыслителей, профессора Тарика Рамадана. Я рад приветствовать вас, уважаемый профессор, и передаю вам приветствие от духовного лидера российских мусульман, муфтия шейха Равиля Хазрата Гуйнуддина, который, к большому сожалению, сегодня лично не смог присутствовать в связи с тем, что находится с официальным визитом в Китайской Народной Республике. Действительно, это важный визит, потому что не только нас объединяют с китайскими мусульманами религиозные наши узы, но и, конечно же, узы братства и долгих лет совместной работы. Действительно, на территории Китайской Республики сегодня есть древнейшие мечети, которые были построены выходцами из нашей страны. Ну и прежде чем передать слово уважаемому профессору, я хотел бы огласить наш регламент. Сейчас мы хотели бы предоставить несколько слов для презентации этого издания профессору, после чего все вы, уважаемые коллеги, сможете задать некоторые вопросы, но помните о том, что мы очень ограничены во времени. Сегодня, как вам всем прекрасно известно, благословенный пятничный день, и ровно в 12 часов мы будем вынуждены закончить для того, чтобы выйти в основной зал нашей мечети и попросить уважаемого профессора выступить перед многотысячными прихожанами нашей мечети. Спасибо вам за внимание и передаю слово уважаемому профессору Тарику Рамадану.
السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm unable to speak in Russian, so allow me to speak in English, and I have the translation and everything. I really want to thank you for this invitation here in this mosque, for this talk this morning, related to the book that was translated into Russian. And that's a great achievement after a long struggle and a long time waiting for this translation. And I want to thank Zainab, who is here, who is a member of the European Muslim Network, with other brothers and sisters who are here as well, who are involved with us in this work, who have been very instrumental in making it possible to have the book in Russian. It's not the first time I'm coming to Russia, and I have been following the life of the Muslims, the long history, the recent history, and the challenges that you are facing these days. But I will let the contemporary issues coming from your questions, and for me to answer some of the questions that you may have about what is happening around the world. What I really want to do this morning is to say a few things about what could be necessary for us as Muslims to get from our religion in order also to be able to face up to the challenges of our time. You know, I have been involved in three fields, mainly in my life. The first is the field of Islamic studies and then Ulum al-Islamiyya, Islamic sciences, and try to come back to this faithfulness to the Islamic tradition by coming back to the scriptural sources of Quran, well, Ahadith, and all the, what we call it, Turath, the Islamic tradition, and to get a sense of how do we have to be, how can we be faithful today to our texts, to the Quran and the Sunnah, and at the same time to face the challenges of our time. And this is why I have been working for a long time on fiqh, usul al-fiqh, so Islamic law and jurisprudence, the fundamentals of Islamic law and jurisprudence, and to renew our understanding. Saying that I don't think that Islam needs reform, but the Muslim minds needs reform. We need to have a better understanding of our scriptural sources. So we have to renew our understanding. So this is one of the fields within which I was working. The second one is about Muslims in Muslim majority countries, what is happening in the Middle East, and have been working on some of the challenges about pluralism, about civil society, democratization, and how we have to deal with some of the challenges, meaning democratization, education, social justice, environment, culture, and environment as well as economics. And the other field is, of course, Western Muslims. And I know that one of the first books that came to you in Russia was to be a European Muslim, is how to be at the same time fully Muslim and at the same time a Western Muslim. And it's not new for Russian people, for Eastern European people. It's much more new for Western European people and Western countries. So what you are experiencing, it's a very long history, something which is deep. So the three fields were important in my work: the fundamentals of Islam, Muslim in Muslim majority countries, and Muslims in the West, or as minorities. And this book about the Prophet, ﷺ, peace be upon him, it's a book coming back to the more authentic traditions that we have related to the Prophet, ﷺ, to the Messenger, peace be upon him, and to try to come to the faithfulness to our tradition, but also to be able to respond to, okay, how do we have to read this today? How do we have to read the Prophet's life today? Because what we know is that as Muslims we say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. Say there is no God but God, there is the only deity, it's God, and the Prophet, the Messenger, peace be upon him, is our messenger and the last messenger. He, Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the last messenger. Having said that, what we have is also in the Quran, قُلْ إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله. Say, if you love God, follow me, God will love you. So it's the way you are connected to God is by following the Prophet ﷺ, but it's not only following. In kuntum tuhibbun Allah means if you love Allah. So it's a love story, it's the way you love Him. So it's not only tell me what is right and tell me what is wrong, tell me halal or tell me haram. No, it's not about this first. It's the heart being called to follow the Prophet out of love to God and towards God. So we need to understand this, because very often Muslims, and especially when we are in minority, we end up reducing Islam to a set of halal, haram, lawful, unlawful, and not understanding that at the end what we need to get this spiritual connection to God, which is love. And this is the best way to follow the Prophet. This is also what we have, and what we also have in the Quran. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. There is in the Messenger the best model for you to follow. So it's out of love to God that you follow Him. It's out of love that you will be faithful, and it's by following Him that you will get the best model. All this together, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Prophet, peace be upon him, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We sent you but as a mercy to the worlds, the visible and the invisible worlds, the worlds of human beings, but also all the other worlds that we can't see, the invisible dimensions. So he's a rahmah, he's a mercy. So how come today we Muslims around the world you speaking Russian or whatever is your language, and around the world, Arabic languages, your Western languages, sometimes we have a difficulty to introduce the people to the Prophet's life, alayhi salatu. So this was my challenge, is how to be faithful to the legacy, but at the same time, inshallah, to translate this into understanding him now, for us now. So this is what I try to do by saying, in fact, if you come back to the Prophet ﷺ, you understand that there is something which is very deep. And the first dimension is that, in fact, he was an orphan at the beginning, fatherless, and then with no father, no mother. And you have in the Quran a word that has two roots, but one of the roots of the word, al-tarbiyya, is connected to the educator. That Allah Ta'ala was the only educator of the Prophet. Of course, he was coming from a specific environment, but he was his educator. And then the educator took him and he made him al-Mukhtar, which is the chosen one, to be the last messenger. And what was very essential is really for us to understand this very special connection that he had with God, and from the very beginning. And this is something that we today, contemporary Muslims, we need to get at with the deepest understanding of what Islam is all about. Because at the end, when he got the first revelation, he got a spiritual conversion, something that was changing his life, to the point that he, when he was talking up to God, he was telling him, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Who you who change our heart, just strengthen and make our heart follow the path. So you are changing, and this is a conversion, meaning that in fact the Prophet's life, his introduction to Islam. If somebody is coming to me and asking me about can I get an introduction to Islam, it's very difficult to take the Quran and to start reading, because the Quran, its spiritual dimension of the Quran, it's easy. But the deep understanding of the Quran is not an easy book. It's not, because it's not chronological. The rules are not put in the chronological way. You need some knowledge to get. So sometimes you are driven by the spiritual dimension of the Quran, but the understanding, it's not always easy. The Prophet's life, والسلام, peace be upon him, it's easier. Why? Because it's chronological and you can see the steps through which he went to come close to God. So first he took him and he told him three things. Now if you want to be with me, the one, the only one, now you have to look at the world in a different way and to look at yourself in a different way. So this is the spiritual conversion that the Prophet ﷺ started to have. He was looking for truth. He was not happy during all his life until he reached 35. He was not happy with the idols and these tribes worshipping idols. So he started to look for the truth. And when he was 35, he was taking 1 month every year to be on his own. So this is also something which is important. All of us today, how much time do we allocate to come back to our heart and to check our sincerity? So it's not easy. It's not only simple to come to the mosque and say, you know what, I'm a Muslim. No, that's fine. You are a Muslim. Are you checking your intention? So what we call in Arabic, to renew your intention. So if you are with God, you renew your intention. Everything that we are doing has to do with our intention. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, before even he got the first revelation, was sincerely looking for the truth. So he was isolating himself from the people. Why? Because all the beloved people that we have in our life are always good people. But they could be as good as they could be disturbing in our spiritual journey. So mind you, this is why the last verse of the Quran, the last verses of the Quran are قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ
It's all about, I am asking the Lord of the people, the educator of the people, the king of the people to protect me. So it's about protecting us from being driven towards things that are not helping us to be sincere. So the starting point of his spiritual journey is check your heart. Check your heart. And check your heart is not, yes, I am a believer and that's it. No. Why do we pray 5 times a day? Why do we have Jum'ah? Why do we fast? Is to renew the intention every time. Why? Because it's insan, the human being in Arabic, fihi nisyan, there is forgetfulness in our way of dealing. There is forgetfulness. We are people who are forgetting. And we need always to repeat, even with our affection. If you go to your wife, and you go to your husband, and you say to her or to him, I love you, and then you don't repeat this for 10 years, you can't say, I told you I love you 10 years ago. You can't do that. In spiritual and affection terms, you need to repeat, because in repeating there is in depth. It's repeating not for the reason to get, for the heart to get that peace. Peace with our heart is repetition. We need to repeat. So we pray 5 times a day to come back to God, to repeat, to come close. So this is what happened with him. The first is check your intention, come to me. Ya Rasulullah, you are the messenger of God, come now. Ya ayyuhal, and then we have this call for every one of us. Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, all you who believe, come. So we have to respond to the call. 2 things that were so important. The first one is that when you believe in God, Allah is saying to the Prophet ﷺ from the beginning, now look at the world. Look at the world as much as you were in a ghafla. Ghafla means what? You see things, but you don't get the meaning of things. So you go outside. When I came yesterday evening, I was looking at Moscow, I was looking now at this big mosque. This big mosque is not beautiful only because it's beautiful. It's beautiful because it's a sign of our beautiful take on things. Allahu Jamil yuhibbul Jamal. Allah is beautiful and He likes beauty. If you make a big mosque with a beautiful taste, it's for you to recall the beauty of God. It's not just to be arrogant on earth. No, the Prophet ﷺ had a very small mosque with a deep intention. Now we can have beautiful mosques, but the intention should be the same. The intention, it should be not to show off. Look at our mosque. Okay, we show you our mosque, but we have nothing in our heart. No, we have to have beautiful mosque and to keep beauty in our heart. So the point is that the Prophet ﷺ was asked to look at the world, look at the trees, look at the suns. Look, you have all this in the Quran. All the last verses, chapters of the Quran as wal-qamar, wal-shams, wal-duha, wal-layli idha saja. All this is about what? Look at the world. So to be with God means to see the invisible with a new way of making it visible. So nature was around him, invisible. Okay, you are in the desert, you are the sun, you have everything. Now you have to look at this in a different way. Why? Because these are gifts. Gifts. This is coming from God. So now you took it, before this, you took it for granted. Now with God, you thank God of having all this. So to look at them in a new way. And the last thing, and the third thing, which is also very important, straight. If you are with God, it has to change your relationship with the invisible human beings. Who are the invisible human beings? The poor people. كلا بل لا تطعمون اليتيم. So the point is, it's that we are sometimes very neglectful towards the poor people. And then this attitude towards the poor is also something that came straight away from the Quran. So the way we have to deal with the poor people, it's also something which is important. Why? Because the Prophet, peace be upon him, was followed by the poor people. What is our relationship with the poor people? What is our relationship with the oppressed people? From the very beginning of Islam, the way you are with God should be a way you are with poor people and for justice. Inna Allah ya'muru bil 'adl. Allah commands justice. So all this for us is very important. Why? Because today, this is what we need. We need to renew our intentions. We need to respect nature. You know that in 1 week in Paris, there is this COP21 about the environment. The Muslims should be at the forefront of asking for respecting the environment. Why? Because respecting environment is respecting God. It's not that we have nothing to say about it. And I recall in the book so many ahadiths coming from the Prophet ﷺ about the way we have to protect water, the way we have to protect nature, the way we have to be respectful towards the environment, because all this is coming from God. So if we understand this, it's also something that it's added to this. It's our relationship with the poor people, and then also the way we have to deal with this. Having said that now, and starting and following in the footsteps of the Prophet, peace be upon him, you have different steps in his life when he changed and he was followed by his community. And there is something here which is important. If you look at the Prophet ﷺ and all the companions, look at, for example, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar ibn al-Khattab. There were two companions. One was his friend and the other one was al-Faruq, is the one who was able to say what is right and what is wrong. They didn't have the same opinions as Muslims. And we have even in the Quran, in one issue about prisoners, they disagreed. But there was one thing which was important. The unity of Islam and the unity of the companions was not uniformity of thought, was not. So we need to get this right, that around the Prophet ﷺ, they had different tempers, different characters, and different thoughts, but they were united. We today, we are confusing unity with uniformity. We only want the Muslims to believe like we believe, to think like we know. That's not Islam. Islam is about the diversity of thought, but the unity of principle. And this is why we have to work. And instead of being obsessed with our divisions, we have to set a frame where, look, there is an accepted diversity in Islam. Yes, there are traditionalists. Yes, there are literalists. Yes, there are reformists. Yes, there are Sufi and mystics. Yes, there are rationalists. But we are all coming to come back to the Quran. And the Quran is telling you, if you follow in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, you need to get it right. That he was the leader, but he accepted differences of opinions around with his companions. How is it today that we are obsessed with this unity of thought? We all follow not one example, but we need the Muslims to believe in the same thing as we believe. No, there are diversities, and we need to be much more open-minded. The Prophet ﷺ was dealing with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in a way. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was very, very sensitive, very spiritual. Umar ibn al-Khattab was quite tough with some decisions. And he was tough with women in Medina, he was tough with some. And then the Prophet ﷺ was dealing with the qualities of each, not stressing on the weaknesses of each. That's also a teaching for us today as Muslims, if we are following the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. So the way we deal also with the oppressed, and then also something which was so essential in his life, that we need to understand. Yes, al-halal halal, wal-haram haram. So what is lawful, and what is unlawful is unlawful. And we are not playing with this. I'm not one of those who are coming to play and say, let us forget about some of the prohibitions. No. The prohibitions are clear in Islam. But there is also something which is so deep in the Prophet's teaching, is forgiveness, compassion, and rahmah. So, Muhammadun Rasulullah, the Prophet ﷺ, is the messenger. Rasulullah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَا بَيْنَهُمْ. So they are very tough with the people who are denying the truth and they are combating them. They are tough, they are ready for it. They are ready to resist. But among themselves, when it comes to their affairs, they are رُحَمَا بَيْنَهُمْ, full of mercy, full of forgiveness. So this is also something that we are forgetting sometimes. Not only we don't want a diversity, but we start by judging the people. While the Quran is saying to the Prophet ﷺ, عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. You spread the message. Who is going to judge the people? The only one, not you. You can't do that. You can't judge the people. Today, our community, Muslims around the world, are very quick to judge and not very quick to show the best example. So we like to be labeled Muslims and to be the tribunals of others instead of being the educators of ourselves. So this is also something which is coming out of his life. If you go deep in his life, and you know, when I wrote this book, at the end, I ended crying. I wrote this book very early in the morning. My daughter was always coming, following my work, and I was connected to in a spiritual way, connected to the Prophet ﷺ. And then you when you get this, you say, Subhanallah, that when you look at the way he was, full of forgiveness, full of understanding towards the people, say, how come are we so far from this? So we are becoming more superficial and more judgmental. He was very deep and very open, very full of empathy and compassion. That's the example of the Prophet ﷺ. So we need to reconnect, to reconcile ourselves with this. The people are making mistakes. Yes. Why? Don't you do some mistake? Are you perfect in the way you are with God? We all know the more you look at yourself, that what we call in the Sufi tradition, muraqabat al-nafs, which is you monitor yourself. The more you do this with yourself, the less judgmental you are going to be with others. Because you know who you are. If you know who you are, you stop judging the people and you start improving yourself instead of being the other way around, which is I don't improve but I judge. No, I improve and I keep silent. So the best sometimes, and this is the Prophet, this is what we need today. This is where we have to come today. That's not the only things which is important. Because all these words are important, and the Prophet ﷺ was very, with the companions who were doing things were wrong, he was protecting, and we know this. There is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, مَنْ سَطَرَ مُؤْمِنًا فِي الدُّنْيَا سَطَرَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيا وَالْآخِرَةِ. If you protect, you cover the mistakes and the weaknesses of your brothers and sisters here, Allah will protect you in the here and in the hereafter. So protect the mistakes and the weaknesses. So that's fine. And this is the way he was. So look at the way he was, an open heart for his companions. An open heart. He came, and there is something which is very special. He came with a message. He's the messenger. The messenger is bringing a message. And he kept his time, he kept on listening to people, listening to what they had to say. Listening to what they had to say. So he was listening and he was speaking afterward. Exactly like in Musa alayhi salam, when the magicians were asking, do we first throw or you throw? He said, well, alqu, so give me your proof, I will respond. So come with what you have to say. And that's very important. We need to listen more and speak less. Listen more and speak less. That's the way. And the last thing that I wanted to say to end and to give you the floor for questions is that the Prophet ﷺ was with his heart towards nature. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him from this ghafla, not knowing the meaning of things. They said, now your life has a meaning. And you know what is the meaning of life? Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. You belong to God and you will come back to God. So your life, it's between your source, the source, Him, the one, going back to the final destination, it's Him again. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So you are in between two destinations, and in fact, this destination is your source, the one. You know what I just mentioned now? What is the name in Arabic? It's the way towards the source. And the way towards the source is what gives you water to drink. Water to drink is to help you to survive. What is the meaning of that? Sharia. The Sharia is the path that is bringing you back to driving water that you can survive. And especially when you are in the desert, water means the way for you to survive. So Sharia, it's not Allah's law. That's not only, it's the path. Part of it is Allah's laws, but not the full understanding. And there are two things that are important here in this understanding. You know, when I wrote this book, for almost 15, 20 years, almost, I kept on repeating to Muslims, the most important value of Islam is justice. Justice. Inna Allah ya'muru bil 'adl. Allah commands justice. I wrote this book, and coming through the spiritual dimension, I say no, justice is not the final value. Justice is a means for something which is a deeper value. It's a means. Allah commands justice to do what? Exactly what happened with Adam or Hawa, alayhi salam. Adam and Hawa, they said, Allahumma ظلمنا أنفسنا. We have been unjust with our own self. وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. If you don't forgive us, if you don't protect us from ourselves, we are going to be from the lost people. So, ظلمنا أنفسنا, we have been unjust with ourselves. So, injustice could be towards yourself, towards the poor people, towards the oppressed people, towards the people around you, towards even nature. You can be unjust with nature if you don't respect the trees. If you don't, you know, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, following in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, sending Usama to the north here, you don't touch women, you don't touch children, you don't touch nature, you respect everything. You have to be respectful. Even if you are at war with the enemies, you respect nature because this is a gift, you can't destroy it. So this is our religion. It's all about justice with ourselves, with Allah first, with ourselves, with nature, with poor people, with the oppressed. But this justice is to get what? What are you trying to get in life? Justice? No. The highest value is coming from Islam itself. Islam, as I don't know how you translate this into Russian, but into English and French and other European languages, we translate Islam by submission. That's not the right submission, the right translation. It's a very distorted, reductive translation of Islam. Because in Islam there is salam and istislam, which means that you have it in the Quran. Idkhulu fi silmi kafa. Enter into Allah's peace, into God's peace with all your being. In fact, the highest value of Islam is peace. Is peace. Salamat al-nafs, the peace, the inner peace that you are trying to get. So if you are just with yourself, you will get that peace. If you are unjust with yourself, you will never get that peace. If you are just with the people, there will be peace. No justice, no peace. So peace is the final. What we need is justice and peace. What we need is dignity and peace. And dignity for the sake of peace. But justice alone, no. It's a means towards something which is higher. And salam is what? Allah yad'u ila dar as-salam. God is calling you to the abode of peace. It's the name of God, as-salam. His name is as-salam. The paradise, the name is as-salam. The path is as-salam. Everything is about salam. So all the people who are coming to say, you don't want these Muslims, with all the police that could around and all what he said about Islam today is, you know, these Muslims, they are for jihad and it's qital, and that's the opposite. Jihad, it's the way towards peace. I'm having an inner jihad with my own bad temptations to get what? Peace. I'm resisting the oppressors to get what? Peace. I'm struggling for justice to get what? Peace. It's a way towards peace. Jihad is the opposite of what is said today. And this is coming from the Prophet ﷺ. So we need to be very clear on what are the values that we are proposing. We are Muslims, agents of peace on earth. Peace with God, peace with nature, peace with ourselves, peace with our neighbor. To the point that we have in the Quran, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحبه لنفسه, and the other hadith is لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لجاره ما يحبه لنفسه. You are not completing your faith if you don't want for your brother and sister in humanity what you like for yourself. You will not complete your faith if you don't want for your neighbor what you want for yourself. So this is coming from the Prophet's life. This is so essential. But, contrary to what is said, to be an agent of peace takes effort and courage. Effort, Means that you have to struggle with your own self to get this inner peace and to be just with yourself. What are you doing with your mind? The Quran is saying from the very beginning, Iqra, you have to read, meaning you have to get more knowledge. Check yourself. Do you have more knowledge today than you had yesterday? Are you going to try your best to have more knowledge tomorrow than you have today? This is the commitment to knowledge. This is the commitment to learning. So this is something that you have to be just with your own self. And this is the way for you, you have to be, to check your relationship to your heart. Are you giving yourself every day of your life enough time with to your heart to get this peace? Are you checking the relationship that you have? You have to be just with your own heart. You have to be just with your own body. Are you taking care of your body in the way you care about it? Why? Because you know your body is not your body. This is coming from everyone. Your body is not your body. One day you will come back to Allah, He will ask you, what have you done with your body, with your health, with your hygiene, with everything. You have to be cautious with the way you treat yourself. So this is to be just with your body, just with your mind, just with your heart, just with your wife, with your husband, with nature and everything. And this means effort. So this is what we call it in jihad. Jihad, it's effort, and it's resisting what is bad and reforming what is good. But let me say something which is important here. You will not achieve this if you are not courageous. To say La ilaha illallah on earth, to say there is no God but the only one God on earth, means that you have to face human beings, that you have to face oppressors, that you have to face people who are lying. All the prophets, all of them, and among them the 5 that are the most ulul azm, that are the most prominent prophets and messengers that you have: Noah, Ibrahim, so Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, alayhim as-salam jami'an, peace be upon all of them. All of them, they came with a message of peace. What they got? People who wanted to kill them, to destroy them. That's the reality of prophethood on earth. You come with peace, and you have people who want to exploit and to kill. So you have to be ready, to be courageous. To the point that afdalul jihad, kalimatu haqqin amam sultan jahil, the best jihad that you have on earth is to say the truth to a tyrant. Exactly like Musa and Harun alayhim as-salam, they went to Pharaoh, and they were told to say that وَقُلَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. Say to him soft words, sweet words. Maybe he will remember and change and be scared. But they had to do it. So you have to be full of compassion, full of forgiveness, but you have to be courageous. You have to say this, to speak the truth. You have to face the oppressors. That's the reality of it. And today, too many Muslims in the West, and maybe you in Russia, we want so much to be accepted that we forget courage in the way we are Muslims. We have to speak the truth. We have to be independent. We have to be intellectually independent, religiously independent, politically independent, financially independent, in order to be able to speak the truth and to say, look, that's not right. Because why? Courage and justice are the ways towards peace on earth. So this is what we get from the Prophet ﷺ, and what I try to do is to read the Prophet's life in the light of our challenges, and say which lessons, spiritual lessons, contemporary lessons, we can draw from his life for our life today. So this is an introduction to some of the issues and some of the values and some of the principles that I think we can share. And I know that you may have some questions about contemporary issues, so the floor will be yours, and I'm open to respond to your questions. Wallahu a'lam wa a'la wa ahkam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Большое спасибо, уважаемый профессор. Очень интересное и познавательное выступление. Действительно, я успел немножко ознакомиться с этой книгой, и то, что меня поразило, это акцент на воспитании пророка, алейхиссалату вассалам, природой. Действительно, наверное, мусульманское сообщество сегодня имеет очень много проблем и не доходит до обсуждения проблем окружающей среды, но то, что вы в своей книге сегодня в своем выступлении это затронули, действительно, на самом деле, мне кажется, очень-очень важен, ну и, конечно, все другие акценты. И первое слово, и первый вопрос, который я хотел бы предоставить, это тот человек, который тоже один из немногих, кто успел уже сегодня ознакомиться с этой книгой, автор предисловия к русскому изданию. Это многоуважаемый Игорь Леонидович Алексеев, кандидат исторических наук, руководитель научных программ фонда Марджани. Пожалуйста, вам слово.
Большое спасибо. Я, правда, думал, что вопросы будут задаваться не в рамках представления слова по регламенту, а может быть люди с рук будут...
Только вам, такая честь, только вам.
И так далее. Потому что, строго говоря, у меня нет никаких вопросов. Я, по большому счету, значит, с текстом, да, включите, пожалуйста, не знаю, где это делается. Я даже не сегодня ознакомился с этим текстом, а внимательно читал его в процессе подготовки русского издания. В этом смысле я, конечно, поздравляю всех российских читателей. И я даже не знаю, больше мусульман или больше не мусульман, поскольку вот действительно, как сказал уважаемый профессор Tariq, очень важно найти способ представления ислама широкому читателю. У мусульман больше возможностей. Они могут пойти в мечеть, они могут пойти к шейху, они могут получить знания религиозного характера и знания о тех ценностях, о которых сейчас так пламенно и темпераментно говорил доктор Tariq, из различных источников, из семьи, из общины, из какого-то более широкого круга. Для общества непосвященного, не входящего в ограду мечети, для тех, кто, так сказать, не связан культурно, исторически и интеллектуально с мусульманским пространством, конечно, важно найти тот язык и те способы донесения содержания мусульманского послания, содержания ценностей ислама, которые были бы понятны неподготовленному читателю. В этом смысле я как раз и в своем предисловии тоже остановился на истории жизнеописаний пророка в русской литературе. Здесь как раз, может быть, даже это будет больше интересно самому Тарику в связи, так сказать, с дальнейшей какой-нибудь дискуссией, которая развернется в этом зале. Ведь дело в том, что в России большая часть текстов, написанных об основателе ислама, о пророке Мухаммаде, саллаллаху алейхи вассалям, это тексты, написанные не мусульманами. Собственно, с одной стороны не мусульманами, но с другой стороны и не исследователями ислама. Это либо тексты, которые создавались христианскими миссионерами, либо это тексты, лучшее до сих пор русское сочинение о Мухаммаде, это сочинение, написанное христианским религиозным философом Владимиром Соловьевым в конце XIX века. И это христианская апология ислама с позиции, то есть он, оставаясь христианином, фактически подошел к признанию пророческой миссии Мухаммада. Еще один шаг, и он мог бы произнести шахаду, но он этого не сделал. И вот в этом весь драматизм и, так сказать, все такое историческое экзистенциальное напряжение вот той истории, в рамках которой мусульмане существуют в российском пространстве, и в рамках которых российская история и российская культура взаимодействуют с миром ислама, с его ценностями. То есть это, с одной стороны, стремление к пониманию, которое останавливается вот на каком-то этапе, дальше которого уже, значит, проходили какие-то другие процессы. Я надеюсь, на самом деле, что работа Тарика откроет для русского читателя новые подходы, которые при этом будут общими как для мусульманской части читающей публики, так и для немусульман, потому что важно не только нахождение языка представления ислама немусульманам, но и некого общего языка, на котором представители как ислама, так и других религий или сверх светского общества могли бы обсуждать общие для них проблемы справедливости, любви, мира, правды и так далее и тому подобное. Но одновременно я надеюсь, что и автор этой книги откроет для себя русского читателя и русского собеседника, которому, в общем, мне тоже кажется, есть что сказать, исходя из своего исторического и культурного опыта в ответ на те мысли и идеи, которые автор высказал и в этой, и во многих других работах. И я, в общем, надеюсь, может быть, действительно здесь это вот к издателям, что, в общем, эта работа, дай бог, является первой, но не последней из русских изданий Тарика Рамадана, и какие-то еще вещи, значит, связанные с проблемами шариата, например, в европейском обществе. Вот то, что составил, собственно, научное, а не сугубо религиозное имя профессора, тоже будет переведено на русский язык и здесь издано. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое, уважаемый Игорь Леонидович. У нас с вами, уважаемые коллеги, остается всего 45 минут, поэтому давайте будем оперативно работать. И, пожалуйста, кто хочет задать вопрос, поднимайте руку, и наши ассистенты подойдут к вам для того, чтобы вы смогли задать вопрос. Пожалуйста, первый ряд.
В начале своего выступления вы говорили о том, что есть мусульмане Европы, и по примеру Пророка мы должны учитывать специфику, учитывать особенности, шире смотреть на многие вещи. А в конце своего выступления вы говорили о том, что европейским, западным мусульманам требуется независимость. Независимость от кого вы имели в виду? Независимость от большинства окружающего мусульман на Западе, поскольку, несмотря на то, что у нас много, но все-таки меньшинство, или независимость от традиционных образовательных центров, таких как Аляска. Что это за независимость? И не ведет ли такая независимость, с одной стороны, к сектантству, или с другой стороны, к созданию такой вот бархатной версии ислама, устраивающей вот то самое большинство, в рамках которого мы существуем? Спасибо.
Thank you. That's a very important question, and you are helping me to precise my thought on this. When I'm speaking about independence, I'm really speaking about the deep understanding of our religion. For example, you have centers of Islamic knowledge in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, in other countries around the world. And by the way, it's not the only two countries. You have even in Syria, you have in some Muslim majority countries like Indonesia, centers where the teaching of Islam is provided. This teaching of Islam, when it comes, for example, to Al-Aqidah, so the creed, the Islamic creed, the 6 pillars of faith. When it comes to practicing Islam, the 5 pillars of Islam, Arkan al-Islam, the 5 pillars. When it comes to the known prohibition and known obligations that we have, for example, we don't drink alcohol, we don't eat pork, and we have al-muharramat ma'rufa. It means that what is prohibited is known and what is obligatory is known. You can get the knowledge from the scholars. Now, when you have to come to some of the way we deal with the surrounding society, when it comes, for example, of translating all what is coming from Arabic into Russian language, when it comes to understand what are the priorities, what we call al-awlawiyat, في تنزيل الأحكام. So what are the priorities when it comes to dealing with your society? This cannot be done by scholars living in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt. It has to come with scholars knowing the country. Because even the Prophet ﷺ, he knew Mecca and he knew Medina. So, and all the companions, they knew what was going around.
So we also have, and this is coming from Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya, one of the great scholars of Islam, saying, if you want to be a mufti, for example, the mufti here in your country, he should be knowledgeable about the people here. If he is only knowledgeable about the texts, or having the knowledge coming only from Muslim majority countries, he's not going to be able to deal. So what I'm talking about when I speak about independence is we are faithful to the principles, and I don't accept anything which has to do with sects and divisions. But the principles, we also need to understand our life here and to be able to come with fatwa, legal opinions, with a vision for us here, with the understanding of our respective countries. For example, the Arabic, by the way, we should not confuse the Arabic culture with Islam. The Arabic culture, there are many things that in the way the Muslims are behaving in the Arab countries that are Arabic much more than Islamic. And it's not right. So we have to take what are the principles and what are the fundamentals, and we find our model in our country to make it and to be faithful. For this you need quite a great deal of independence. So we need to have scholars. They can get the knowledge from Saudi Arabia, get the knowledge from Egypt or whatever, but when they come here, they need to get the knowledge of the country where they are, in Europe, in the West, or even what happened in Africa, what happened in Asian countries. They were knowledgeable about the environment and very strong as to the principles. I call it independence, and not to accept that you have muftis in their countries telling us what is right for us here. Yes, they can tell us about the fundamentals and aqidah, but not about the way we have to deal with our people here in our society. So this is what I call independence. Financial independence, so it's not only the independence from the non-Muslims or people of other faiths. No, it's independence in the way as people who are trying to be faithful, we understand the text and we understand the context. And this is important in Islam. In Islam, 9 out of 10 of all the legal recommendations have to do with the translation between the principles and the context. How it-tanzil ala al-waqi', which is, how are you going to translate this here, now? So you can't just, I'm sorry, I don't want you to be bound by a fatwa in Saudi Arabia telling you that women should not drive. This is not Islamic. This is culturally driven, it's wrong. So be independent from this. And then you have to find your way here about what are the priorities. So this is very important. And you should be also financially independent, because there is never free money. You don't get money without some direction and ideological direction, so you have to be cautious with this. Politically independent from all the states. You have to be independent from the states in Muslim majority countries, but even here, take a distance and find your way where you are independent from the power. This is where you can be also able to provide your community with something. Political independence, financial independence, religious independence, that are very important, and intellectual independence. You know what in Russia, for example, what I heard about, you have to be intellectually independent. You have to think by yourself. So these books like this, you have to produce books. You have to have a voice within, which is showing that you are intellectually independent. You should not rely on things that are produced by others, and you have to think by yourself. So we need Russian Muslims independent, intellectually, politically, religiously, and financially. This is what I meant.
Спасибо. Еще вопрос, пожалуйста.
When you mentioned the Arabic, you mentioned that you used to be when you are starting to go back to yourself. The first one is to the second one is to the back is to remind us of the first.
I forgot to read. No, what I was saying is, you know, you have it, just what you said is in one verse in the Quran. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. So we will show to them our signs in the horizons, which is the surrounding world, and in themselves, which is the inner world. Now, having said this, what we have to do is within this science, we have to behave the right way. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِيُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent but to beautify the good character. So what is the good character? What we have in the Quran saying, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Those who believe and do good deeds. So it's our action on earth, which is the third dimension. So we, as Muslims, we should make our faith visible. Not by having a stamp, not by putting Islam, not by having good mosque or great mosque. That's all good. I'm not against it. If and only if, when we get out of the mosque, we are the good example that the people should see in our behavior, the way we talk to people, the way we serve the community, the way we serve humanity, the way we have to be for peace and for justice, the way we are courageous, the way we are courageous. You know, many people in the West, people of other faiths, they're not Muslims. You know why they respect what I'm doing? Because I'm challenging power. I'm trying with courage to say, no, that's not true. What you are doing in the Middle East is not right. What you are doing against the Palestinians is not right. So you have people of other faiths that they, why is he so courageous to say things? Because we have convictions, because we rely on something. So the good behavior is to be clear with our principles, so our behavior is critical.
Как вы относитесь к тому, что созданное вашим дедом течение в некоторых странах, как в Египте, запрещение
Yes, your facts are right. I'm the grandson of Hassan al-Banna rahimahullah, and I am proud of it. And no one on earth will never put me in a situation where I'm not happy or I'm worried about this. I'm the grandson of somebody who in the 30s and the 40s said to the British in Egypt, this is not your country. You have to leave. I'm the grandson of somebody who said to Muslims, there is no way for you to free yourself from political and cultural colonization if you don't come back to faith, spirituality, and commitment. I'm the grandson of somebody who said to the Zionists, what you are doing is wrong, because this is not your land, this is not your country, and we are going to fight for that. So I know that in the West, his positions were distorted to the point that they said, you know what, he was supporting the Nazi. While if you come back to what he read, he said in the 30s and in the 40s, one of the signals of the Western decadence and the European decadence is fascism, is the National Socialist movement and Mussolini. This is what he wrote, saying this is your decadence, it's not us. We have nothing to do with fascism, we have nothing to do with Nazis. But now the Israeli propaganda is saying, look, they were supporting the Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who went to meet with Hitler, because he was thinking at that time that the Germans are going to get rid of the British who were selling Palestine to the
Zionist project. This is what happened at that time. But this was not the position of my grandfather. So on this, I'm proud of it. So your facts are right, and I'm proud of this. Now, what I said also is that with the organization, I'm not one of the Muslim brothers. I'm not from the Brotherhood, but I think that they have the right to be involved in politics. And all the people are saying that they are radicals and violence is wrong. That's not the reality. They were never violent. And even after the coup in Egypt, after the Sisi coup d'etat, they were not violent. He is violent, and he is killing and torturing the people in jail and sentencing to death. In the history, it never happened in Egypt. In less than 20 minutes, 1,200 people to death. That's the reality of this regime. And the West is welcoming and talking, and we have to deal with this military corrupt regime. So now, I disagreed on many, and I wrote a book on the Arab awakening saying how critical I was with the vision that the Muslim Brothers had for Egypt, because I think they were not enough dealing with the issues and coming with the old rhetoric of the 40s, you know, the Islamic reference. I was critical, but I cannot accept that even though you are critical with them, that they could be tortured, put in jail, and banned from the political landscape. That's not that's not right. This is once again something which is against human rights, against democracy, and against what should be done. So this is where I stood up, and just now I'm just coming from Canada. We had a meeting about Egypt, and I was quite clear about this regime. This regime is a corrupt regime supported by the Western countries, and the first is the United States of America, and I think that this is completely wrong. And this couldn't be accepted. You may disagree with them, but when the elections are bringing to power people, even if you don't like them, you let them go until the end of the mandate. You don't change the people because you don't like them. I think that this is happening. This happened in Algeria. It happened with Hamas. Okay, the people are called for democracy, and when they win, they say, "Oh, we don't like your vote. Now we change the whole thing." That's not democracy. This is playing with rules. And I would say that on this, I'm very critical, and I won't be quiet on this. I won't be quiet on supporting the Palestinians' rights, but I won't be quiet on supporting any oppositions as long as they don't kill innocent people, they respect the rules of the game, they have the right to be involved in the political dynamics. Willing it or not, this is the starting point of our democratic institutions.
Ассаламу алейкум ва рахматуллахи ва баракатуху. Уважаемый профессор, я представляю здесь научный журнал, председателем редакционного совета которого является уважаемый муфтий шейх Равиль Гайнуддин. Это журнал «Ислам в современном мире». И спасибо вам за то, что вы уже нашли возможность перед тем, как мы с вами зашли в этот зал, вы дали свое согласие войти в состав Международного редакционного совета этого журнала. Для нас это высокая честь, и этот сертификат удостоверять будет то, что вы вошли в нашу дружную команду Международного редакционного совета, и после джума главный редактор этого журнала найдет возможным вам лично вручить этот сертификат. Альхамдулиллах, я поздравляю всех нас с тем, что в нашу дружную команду влился такой уважаемый ученый. Поприветствуем еще раз его. Если позвольте, два вопроса к вам, как действительно к ученому. Когда мы говорим, что мы, мусульмане, должны идти по стопам пророка, это означает, что мы должны поддерживать в себе и сохранять нашу мусульманскую идентичность. Когда мы живем в России, в Российской Федерации, мы формируем в себе еще и национально-государственную идентичность. И, открывая Московскую соборную мечеть вместе с президентом Путиным, муфтий шейх Равиль Гайнуддин на весь мир заявлял о том, что мы, мусульмане России, мы чувствуем себя, ощущаем себя прежде всего гражданами России. Как вы полагаете, какая идентичность у мусульман России должна ими осознаваться более всего, прежде всего? Я мусульманин, или я гражданин России, или я мусульманин России? Я бы мог вопрос такой же задать и вам. Какую идентичность вы прежде всего ощущаете? Вы мусульманин или мусульманин Швейцарии, или гражданин Швейцарии? И второй вопрос. Вы один из разработчиков концепта известного евроислам. Этот концепт несколько лет назад очень активно поддерживался в Татарстане, в том числе президентом Татарстана Шаймиевым. Через несколько лет этот концепт практически ушел из публичного пространства Татарстана и в России. Мы говорим сейчас о традиционных ценностях российского ислама. Понятие евроислам менее и менее используем. Не вызывает ли это у вас, как у одного из основных разработчиков этого концепта, внутреннюю обиду, может быть, на то, что сегодня из научного и политического пространства этот концепт в России, во всяком случае, выходит за рамки? Спасибо большое.
Thank you for first inviting me to be one of the members of your committee. Let me come to your questions, and I will start with the second one. Very often I am presented as the one who introduced the concept of Euro-Islam, which in fact is not me. The one who did this is somebody called Bassam Tibi, a Syrian intellectual in Germany, who was the first to use this. I never used Euro-Islam, I just used the concept of being a European Muslim. But I don't have a problem with European Islam, but we have to be clear on the words that we are using. Exactly what the question that you asked me, when it comes to the fundamentals, Arkan al-Iman, Arkan al-Islam, al-Aqidah, all this, we have only one Islam, but we have only one Islam. There is only one Islam. There is not Islams as sociologists are putting it. That's not the right way of putting it. We from within, we know that there is only one Islam. We have two main traditions. The great majorities are Sunnis, and then you have Shia, and within you have Madhahib, schools of law, and everything. By the way, I have a book that is coming in January, which is the Essential Introduction to Islam, which is just explaining all this for Muslims who need to know this, and people of other faiths. It's coming in January. It's a new book. But so we have this. It's the fundamentals. Now, you live in Russia, I live in Switzerland, others are living in Germany, in France, in Britain, in the States, in African countries. And they are taking from the countries the culture, the surrounding culture. So they are Muslims by religion, African by culture, American by culture, European by culture, and that's not a problem. You can have both, because it's exactly what happened with Arabs. They were Muslims by religion, and they were Arabs by culture. To the point that if you read the book, you see at one point that when the Muslims experienced al-Hijrah from Mecca to Medina, in fact, the Meccan culture is not exactly the same as the Medinian culture. And especially with women, because the women were very, very present in the social setting in Medina. Umar ibn al-Khattab was very, very annoyed by this. He said, now they answer back to us, this woman here in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ smiled by saying, you have to cope with this culture. It's not less Islamic. They have the right to answer back. It's not because you are used to the Meccan culture that you should not deal with the Medinian culture. In the Medina, they are very much there. And they were even involved in the market of Medina and trading and having a presence. And they went to the Prophet asking him, we want you to teach us. Not only we want the teaching with the men, but we want special teaching for us. And they have to cope with this.
And you know that the Prophet ﷺ said once, "La tadrabu ima Allah." So you have no right to be violent with the servants of God, meaning women. You don't have the right to beat them. And this was something which was even for Omar, who was used to another attitude, dealing with a new culture. So we can be Muslim with different culture. So now, I said, to be a European Muslim means I'm European by culture and Muslim by religion. And if you ask me, I'm always saying to all the Muslims, and for you it's very important, I have multiple identities. I don't only have one. And you know the way I'm doing this, I'm saying, I'm Egyptian, you know, you mentioned where I'm coming from, I'm Egyptian by memory. I'm Swiss by nationality, I have the passport. I'm Muslim by religion. I'm universalist by principle. I'm a Moroccan by adoption because I like Morocco and I like Mauritius. So I have many identities, and it's not a problem. Why do you want me to? Do you want to reduce me to one identity? No, we have multiple identities, and our culture is part of it. So you should not, you Russian Muslim, Arabize yourself, Turkishize yourself. Whatever you or Pakistanize yourself or whatever. You are Russian and you have your culture, and that's not a problem. You have to celebrate this. Now, in all the discussion, and this is also something that we see with some trends that are coming from Saudi Arabia, because we have some, they go and they train there, they come here, very literalist, and they say everything about Russia is wrong. They are asking us to become more Arabs than Muslims. That's not the right. You have to be Muslims and to keep your and this is also what I'm saying to converts. You have lots of converts. People, Russian people converting to Islam. They should not Arabize themselves. They should not change their culture. Keep your culture, take what is good from your culture, and deal with the surrounding society. That's the way forward. And now, if you are asked, who are you first? In a book that is not translated in Russian, I was saying this is a very silly question. Because I'm many things, as I said, many identities, and sometimes your identity is coming first. If now you deal with politics in Russia, you are first Russian. You have to deal with the Russian. You vote as a Russian. I cannot vote because I'm not Russian. But now if you deal with your own debt, you are Muslim. Of course you are Muslims and you deal with, so this is the way I keep on repeating the example of Amartya Sen, who is a Nobel Prize, who said, you know, you can be a poet and a vegetarian at the same time. If you go to eat, it's not the time to say I'm a poet, now I'm a vegetarian. But if you go for poetry, it's not the time to tell the people I'm a vegetarian, you are a poet. So depending on the context, you ask something first. So when you vote as a Russian. With one condition. At no point you should accept, in the name of being Russian, to betray the principle. And in fact, if you look at the principles of humanity, there is no contradiction between the principles of being a Muslim and the principles of being a Russian. Normally it should be the same. So for example, if you are asked to go and kill innocent people as a Russian citizen, you should be able to say, no, I don't kill innocent people. So you should not be asked to do something like that. So I would say here that there is no contradiction between us being Muslims and when you vote you are a Russian. So we have to get rid of this. And if you see people speaking less about being a European Muslim, no, I would say it's everywhere now. You know what I'm telling you now is mainstream. The great majority of the Russian Muslims, they want to remain Muslims and Russian at the same time. Now you have to build on this a better understanding. So this is why what was said by you, the first, by saying you may be careful that the great majority of the Russian books on Muslims are written by people of other faiths and non-Muslims. This is why now you have to write, now you have to explain, now you have to dispense, and with your academic setting, this is what is expected from you, is to be able to provide the Russian Muslims with the right way of understanding Islam and the good way of remaining Russian. And this is your nationality in the country. And by being Russian Muslims, you have to have an added value within the society. You know how we should see Muslims It's everywhere, in academic setting, in intellectual setting, in journalism, in social dynamics, and in education. We need to see the Muslims being involved once again with the good behavior that is needed everywhere. So let this mosque be a center irradiating the whole country, not only with the beauty of his walls, but the sincerity of the members, of the Muslims. This is what we could expect.
Я хотела бы задать вопрос, а знакомых вообще с трудами российских богословов, российских просветителей мусульманства? Я имею в виду там 19 века, начала 20-го, в первую очередь татарских, крымско-татарских.
To tell you the truth, not enough. Not enough. For two reasons. First, because the translation of the work was not really done. That is very much for Russian within Russia, and that's the problem. The second is that the connection between your experience in Russia and all the dimension in the Caucasus and the Tatars and all this. This is a story that is missing in the radar of the European setting. So there is a double responsibility. Now, when I was working about our reality as Europeans, of course, I started being connected with many people who are working, and I even know that Mufti, many of the people here in Russia were referring to the work that we were doing in Europe, and I started to have some hints of some of the thinkers, of some of the people, because I came here 3 times before and being connected to some, but it's much more about contemporary thoughts that many of the Russian Muslims were having the impression that what we are saying about European Muslims or Western Muslims is very much what they are experiencing and trying to do. So we have exactly the same vision, but you are right. There is here a missing link. And once again, I would only urge you to do a work of more translations of what you have in Russian into European languages, or even in Arabic. You know, it's not right. Don't think that we have to translate from Arabic to Russian only. We need to translate from Russian to Arabic as well, because the Arabs should learn more about the reality of this country. You know, many people, they don't even know how many millions you have Muslims in Russia and how much they have been involved in everything in your history. Everything in your history, not only the old Soviet Union, but now in Russia, 20 millions of Muslims who are here, and your experience and what you have been providing to this society. The only fact that you protected your religion and you are able to be active within the society is great. And now it's something which is clear. Even your government today cannot think of anything which has to do with the future of Russia without taking into account the fact that Islam is a Russian religion. Get it right. This is the case. With all what is happening in the Middle East, Islam is a Russian religion, and this is something which is acknowledged by your own government in one way or in another. It will be the future. And it is the present.
Если позволите, уважаемый господин профессор, я бы вам, если так можно сказать, посоветовал познакомиться с трудами наших мыслителей. Во многом они писали на арабском языке и, в принципе, доступны, я думаю, для вас в том числе. Вот это в первую очередь такой известный наш мыслитель, как Мусаджи Муллахбегиев. Часть жизни он провел за рубежом, уже вне пределов России, и писал, и издавался на арабском языке. И, наверное, последний вопрос, потому что время нас поджимает.
Скажите, пожалуйста, не думаете ли вы, что мы немножко отстаем от той информационной войны, которая проводится, так скажем, мягко, не друзьями ислама в мире, что связано с последними событиями. То есть вы говорите об исламе как мире и дружбе, да? Но сейчас как-то совсем по-другому проводят политику об исламе. Это первый вопрос. И второй вопрос. Что вы понимаете под... Как бы для вас существует традиционный ислам и нетрадиционный ислам? И как бы вы для себя обозначили вот этот термин?
Yes, that's a good question as well. Look, about what the people are saying, and in the West. The West and around the world, the image of Islam is quite negative. In some countries, for example, today, up to 70% of the people have a negative understanding or perception of Islam. For example, in France, it's 75%, 68% in Britain, almost 70% in Germany. Only the fact that you ask about Islam, it's a worrying, scary, if not negative, image that you have of Islam. So what we have in the West, and even with your fellow citizens here in Russia, if you were to ask them about Islam, it would be also a majority having a negative approach. So we know that now the media covering what is happening in the Middle East, what is happening with terrorist activities and violent extremists who are from Daesh and ISIL and around the world. This is very negative, but it's not new and it's increasing. Now, what could be our answer as Muslims? Just to sit down and to say, oh, you know what, this has nothing to do with Islam, these are not Muslims? Or do we have to take our share of responsibility and to be clear on what we want and who we are? So first thing that I wanted to say, responding to George W. Bush when he said Islam is a religion of peace, after he spoke about the Crusades, he said, oh, Islam is a religion of peace. I said, no, Islam is not a religion of peace. That's not right. Islam is a religion calling for peace. Peace is an ideal. Why am I saying this? Because we are pacifists, but we are ready to stand for justice. So we should, as I said in my talk, that we should be courageous and say we call for justice and we call for peace, but we know that justice is a prerequisite. So, for example, when the people are calling you for peace and they don't want to give you justice, that's not going to work. So this is what I'm saying about the peace process between Palestinians and Israeli. When the Israelis say, we call you for peace, yes, come and let us talk about justice first. Not only about peace, about justice. And when it comes to, oh, we want peaceful Middle East, yes, that's fine, but peaceful Middle East means also justice for all the people in the Middle East. And this is also something which is calling for peace is different to say, oh, it's a statement, it's a religion of peace. Calling for peace means you human beings, you have to be involved in the process, you have to be involved with courage to defend justice, dignity, and freedom for the people. No freedom, no dignity, no justice, no peace. So it's not only, it takes effort, it has to do with our involvement. So we Muslims today, what we have to do is to be much more involved in explaining who we are and what we want, in a way which is not to be on the defensive, not to be victims, that you know what, they don't like us, they don't like Islam. I don't like victimhood. We are not victims. But we have to be subject now, we have to speak out, we have to say who we are. And you, Russian Muslims, this is exactly what you have to do. Who are you in this society? What do you want exactly? What you are calling for? What is your struggle? So is it for dignity for all? Do you want justice only for Muslims and you are ready to kill the people of other faiths? No. The way we speak is very important. You know, even myself, I don't speak about Muslims and non-Muslims. I speak about Muslims and people of other faiths. People who have their own ways. It's not non-Muslims, it's not the negative of me, it's the positive of you. You are people, you are Christians, you are Jews, you are Hindus, and I speak with respect. To the point that I have a responsibility in the Quran. It is said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ لَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Don't insult what they believe in instead of God, they are going to insult God without knowing. So you are responsible of the reactions of the people. Look at this. This is why you have to be respectful towards the faith and the religions of the others. And then we have to be much more visible in everything which has to do with national concerns in Russia. You want to change the perceptions of the people? Work at the level. This is what I call the new we. You know, in Russia, very often when I am in Europe, I say we, Europeans. I say, people, how come you say we? I say, because I am a European. Don't put me outside. I'm a European. I say we are European. So you are Russian. It's a we, the Russian people coming together for the principles of justice and dignity. So we need to change the perception. It's not going to happen with the worldwide media agents. It's not going to happen because this is a game. So the more you have this distorted image of Islam, so we have to be involved in another way in our discussion. And I would say here that this is part of what we have to do as Muslims, is to be involved at our level in all the settings. I will surprise you. I'm expecting Muslims to speak less about Islam and to be much more Muslim. So stop talking about Islam. It's a trap. They put you, say Islam, and say, we are under the, no, let us come. Yes, it's wider than this. Principles, openness. So we have to be much more open in all the discussion. We need to see Muslims talking about education in Russia, about social justice in Russia, about racism in Russia, about environment, everything. We are concerned with all the topics, and this is where we are going to make ourselves visible. So this is your first question about, and the second was, just give me the hand on. Yes, and the second question is about, you have people, tradition means that you are following a school. So for example, you might, in the Sunni tradition, follow a very specific school of Islamic law and jurisprudence. Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Hanbali, or Zayd even, because they were very close to us. Instead of what is said now that they are Shia and they have the right to kill them in Yemen, which is completely wrong. So traditionalists are people who are following a tradition, following a school of law and jurisprudence, or following things that were said by scholars in the past. I don't have a problem with this. I don't have a problem with us following, or some people following a scholar. My point is, what the scholars said in the past was their understanding of the past problems. They're not going to help us to solve our problems today. Which type of answers are you going to get from the scholars of the past about clothing, about euthanasia, about bioethics? They can't give you answers. So the tradition is to a certain point, but we need to deal with contemporary challenges. Now you can change the creation by working on genomics, on the genomes, on the genes. We need answers now. So I would say that you come to the tradition to be faithful, but then you have to deal with new challenges and you need to have the new understanding of things. So we need scientists. Economy, for example. Anything which was said in the 7th century about economy is not relevant for us today because you can't deal with the complex global economy. We know that we don't want riba, we don't want interest, we don't want speculation. But how are we going to deal with the global, so we need answer. The difference here is the tradition is following some scholars. I would say we should never follow blindly a scholar. A scholar is a human being. He might be right, and he might be wrong, or he might be limited because he was talking about a specific period of time. So for example, one of my great shuyukh is Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. In the spiritual terms, he was deep, but in anything which has to do with social relationship, he wasn't a man of his time. So I'm not going to follow what he said is. For example, in the relationship that between a wife and a husband, he's saying it's a relationship between a master and a servant. No, I'm sorry, this is the culture of your time. That's not the right Islamic answer. So we always have to reassess. So this is what I call the difference between the tradition that I'm respecting, and sometimes we need new answers for new challenges. Anyway, just before I give you again the floor, I just want to thank the translator because it was excellent. So what I got in English was excellent, and I think that the whole organization with this translation was excellent. So not only I saw a beautiful mosque, but I saw and I experienced an effective way of transmitting the message, and I want to thank you.
Огромное спасибо, действительно, очень интересно, актуальные вопросы сегодня были подняты. Конечно, я прошу прощения у всех тех, кому сегодня не смогли мы дать слово. К большому сожалению, ограничены во времени. Уже сейчас должны выходить в основной зал, остался свободный учитель, начинается пятничная молитва. Я надеюсь и буду прилагать все усилия для того, чтобы это был не последний визит нашего профессора. И надеюсь, что это не последняя книга, это будет первым камнем в фундаменте нашей долгой совместной дружбы и работы. Огромное вам спасибо.
Gracias.